want to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brantblakes here, back with another Return video. For today's video, we'll be reviewing a replay from the #1 player in the world at the moment, OneCircle. I can't really read his Korean name, so excuse me for not reading his actual name in game. But basically, this guy is rank 1 by like 300 points at a point where losing one game loses him like 120 points. So it's really impressive that he maintains his rank, and I just want to show you guys what he does and try to explain his thought processes and how he plays his game to make sure that he consistently remains at the top. So at the very beginning, we already saw him, change loot zones to get a better loot cluster. Obviously, he isn't alone in Hotel, but since he can see spawns, he knows that the better loot zone next to him is available, so he's going to go there instead of looting his subpar zone in comparison. You can also see that he chose to craft his on the rocks right when he spawned, just using that slowdown period from hyperlooping as more efficient crafting time. And he also went ahead and drank his water because he's not going to bother making whatever the whiskey plus water combination is. He already knows that he's going to be looking for better quality drinks, and it's not really a loss to craft that and drink your water on the way in. So right here, we do see him going into Fire Station, which I think is his final zone for the most part. And we'll see him starting to hit people very early on for mastery. And this is super important because, as you guys know, you get more mastery for dealing damage, and the more mastery you have, the more damage you deal. So every small amount you get early on really helps you out a lot, because that means you're stacking faster because you stacked early, if that makes sense. So he's going to continue farming. Right now it's about a minute from night 1, and he's not going to be looking for those wolves in the bottom or on the left of Fire Station because he sees so many Dylan's around and Dylan can't beat him. So instead he's going to opt to farm the animals in school. If you guys don't know, there's a pretty good cluster of chickens, boars, and wild dogs in this little like L shape of school. So whenever you're in the game, you're in these areas, you can usually get these for some pretty good credits and mastery. Obviously they don't spawn rare materials, which is kind of a bummer, but these, again, it's really good efficiency just because they're almost always going to be up if people aren't farming archery range and this zone in the meantime. So the first big decision from OneCircle is going to be his decision to group up with his teammates early. And so Korea has some weird matchmaking. I think this Rio and Mai are actually high diamond and not Titan. So even though I don't know if OneCircle like tracks his MMR for his teammates, but he's just choosing a group because he understands that his composition is better when all three are together, especially since Rio is weaker relatively early game, and Mai also needs a bit of time to scale, whereas Carla is insanely strong early game. So instead of using that early game to just like farm animals, he's going to be grouping his team to make sure that they can keep in line and keep up and potentially don't fall behind because he's not there to protect them. And so we're going to have the first major fight of the match. I'm going to try and make sure I remember where this timestamp is. I'm going to jump right back because what I'm going to let you guys do is I want you guys to watch the fight yourselves and kind of think about what exactly you would do in this scenario. And then I'll go back, pause a lot, and I try and explain why OneCircle does what he does, just in case you don't understand or you want my viewpoint on what he's doing. So obviously the fight goes pretty in OneCircle's favor, and I think that should be about it. The Tazia runs away. So basically, if we go back, we can see just the very start, obviously OneCircle's team gets a very good initiation because the Tazia gets picked off early. So obviously when you say Tazia this early, this is the best time to burst her because she hasn't had time to drop all of her shards and get her passive stacked up. So that's the reason why all of her teammates immediately jump this Tazia. And when you see this wall drop, that means Tazia is very vulnerable because not only does she not have her passive charge up, she doesn't have her second E to get more shielding, and she doesn't have her main CC. So what OneCircle does is immediately jumps onto her to try and make sure that this Tazia is splintered between her whole team. And you can see that this Tazia ends up force fielding or stasising, which is pretty important because this way she doesn't die. And now we have to make another decision where we now have to kind of figure out if we want to stall for this Tazia or if we're going to focus on our teammates. So Jackie is a pretty high priority threat. I can actually hide the UI here. Oh, I can't because I can't play the replay. But Jackie's a really high priority threat, and obviously Jackie early game especially does a ton of damage. So we're standing next to our Rio, which means that we can actually cut backwards with our Rio and just force the Jackie to decide between one high damage dealer or the other high damage dealer, then work off that. So obviously Jackie goes for Rio, and then OneCircle peels for his other damage dealer by immediately crossbow skilling, which allows them to do a lot more damage because the Jackie has already used her jump which is her main mobility spell. So this Jackie is pretty easy pickings after this point, and you can see that with there's all the damage coming out. And even though he doesn't really need to, OneCircle does juke out of the Carla ultimate. The other Carla just kind of used all her abilities to try and get in, and it wasn't really worth it. But already right now you can see the kind of really good fight micro-awareness from OneCircle. He kind of understands how to appeal for his teammates. He understands how to make sure somebody can't really continue fighting, which was the Tazia. The Tazia just ran away the moment the fight looked bad, which is really smart on her end. But also just like being aware on how to play with your teammates to make sure that it's kind of like a soft taunt, if that makes sense. When you play with the ADC, you always want to be near them so that the enemy team has to choose, but you don't be so close that you both get AoE and cleave down, right? So right now we see that they've all teleported down the factory. I do believe pings on replay are what pings they see in game 2, so we do know that there's already teams around in dock. Factory wolves weren't taken, which is kind of common because not a lot of builds prioritize factory wolves, so a bit more mastery here. And we do see a bit of a catch on this Dylan. Dylan does get away, but this is really important. Oh no, she doesn't get away. Yeah, just a nice little catch from OneCircle's team, even burning Blink to get that. Once again, prioritizing getting early farm is really good, especially since we know that this Dylan might be trying to contest us for Meteor. At this point, we don't know if there's another team at the Meteor, but we just want to make sure that Meteor is as easy to take. Obviously, we see pings now, so we know that Meteor won't quite be free. So once again, a fight. Don't let you guys watch and try and think about what you would do in his scenario. I'm putting this hyper replay menu here until it's over. I think I remember what the timestamp was. Again, these early fights are going to be the more close ones because they don't really have Exodia or huge mastery leads, so I'm hoping that these will be more educational, or like these will help out more, because obviously OneCircle is so insane that the further ahead he gets, the easier and easier the fights look, but there still are micro decisions here and there. So let's go ahead and go back. I think it was 640. Yeah, the AoE ends up getting away. So going back to the Dylan kill where he flashes to get the kill. So again, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but OneCircle actually doesn't win very many games at this point, just because it's so common to get lower MMR opponents, especially at his MMR where he's #1 and he's often playing with like diamonds and low mithrils. So it's really important to know how to play with the team. So right here we see Rio just AFK jumping, and immediately this Nikki jumps him. So he drops his ultimate immediately to force the Nikki to respect his CC and damage, and that ends up giving peel to both him and the Rio, which is really important because, again, these are two very long-range damage dealers. So the enemy team, obviously, they jumped the Rio early because the Rio was resting kind of awkwardly, and now he's gonna be hitting 2 melees. One melee already used their mobility spells, the Nikki, and the other melee hasn't really used everything yet, I think, but is already dropped low because of how much damage these two have done to her. And because of that, this fight's pretty cut and dry. The WM Marlene does land a really nice ultimate on both Mai and OneCircle. But again, you see this Rio is able to do whatever she wants, and I think she is taking on the other Rio right here. I think she's taking on in moments. So once again, soft taunt. This time OneCircle is a taunted target, or rather OneCircle is doing the taunting, while his teammate Rio is doing a lot of work in the background. And we do see here that WM Marlene does kind of get kited away as OneCircle does back out pretty quickly, and we do see that despite all this, OneCircle is making sure to do damage to that WM Marlene to make sure that in the end they can at least potentially take them out. So I don't think that WM Marlene goes down, and OneCircle does go for the Nikki, but we'll see that OneCircle overchases the Nikki to make sure that the Rio can get the stick. And even though there's not really a chance of him killing the Rio, once again, it's just more mastery for OneCircle to grab, because even if you don't kill people, damage to players gives you really efficient mastery gain, so it's really important to make sure that you're always farming. Also, it helps to note that Martina was buffed this patch, so that's probably why OneCircle is playing her, just because she seems a bit better than usual. But yeah, pretty big fight here happens. I don't think there's really a reason to navigate this fight, because I think they just end up disengaging because it's a really bad initiation. And it just goes to show that there's never any shame in just backing off if you think your teammates are taking a bad fight, because it's still day 2, you still respawn, and just because you take one bad fight isn't a big deal because your teammates will come back, and as long as you have a plan for what you're doing afterwards, you can always come back very easily. Obviously, OneCircle's team has already taken a few good fights. They're tied pretty much for most kills in the game. Ironically enough, the team that they beat earlier has the most team kills right now. But now we're going to see how OneCircle and his teammates decide to approach macro for this game. So a really important concept in the Eternal Return is zone control. This is something that carries over from solos. I think it's also always been a very popular concept in squads, but less so just because I think people, especially nowadays, are just running around trying to go to every objective. But OneCircle's gameplay proves that you don't need to always run to every objective. You just need to know where you're farming. And hopefully, obviously, there are objectives near you, but you don't need to get them if they're inconvenient or kind of dangerous. So right now, right before Night 2 starts, is very common. It's a very common time, rather, to get your first upgrade if you haven't gotten it from the tree or meteor. So that's why OneCircle ends up going for the Moonstone, which is going to go ahead and upgrade into his legendary weapon, which I always forget the name of. You can see him go ahead and call in the upgrade for, or the base material for his weapon, just because I don't think crossbows are really popular in this zone. And instead of going for the factory battle zone, we're going to see OneCircle's team go for the alpha instead, because if you guys don't know, mutant bears also spawn on Night 2, so instead of going for the battle zone and potentially like a really messy wipe and, you know, kind of a not guaranteed RNG piece, OneCircle is going to call for his team to go for the alpha instead, and then take the mutant bears after, because that's, well, it's not mutant bears actually, it's just normal bears, but the bears respawn at this time, and they see the timer because they walked by it, so they know exactly when the bears are coming back. So it's just really good awareness from OneCircle's, or I guess I'm assuming it's OneCircle making the calls, but so super good awareness, because instead of going for battle zone and potentially not getting anything besides generic mastery, or even none because you get wiped instantly, instead he's going for the guaranteed RNG, where he has zone control, and then farming all the animals in warehouse and dock, which have a lot of bears, which can also give you more RNG by chance, or just give you generic credits, which is super good because that's more RNG later down the line. Obviously there is another alpha in Uptown, but we can see this team really does not want to leave this area of safety that they've developed in warehouse. At least I don't think he goes over. Oh yeah, it just dies right before he gets there, so they back off. And so we again see this like backup plan they have where they can just go to dock and get bears, which makes this like warehouse dock little pod super good if you have this chance, just because again there's so much RNG to farm. These bears respawn super quickly. Well, not really quickly, they respawn relatively quickly if you're here at the right time. And then there's gonna be a lot of people that might come and go from this area because there's a kiosk in warehouse and a kiosk in chapel, which you have very easy access to because of how these zones are set up. And again, we see these consoles giving so much vision of other teams. So OneCircle's team knows that there's a fight that could take place, and they know there's a team in chapel. And so they're gonna go up and hunt them down because they're super strong, not only because they got all their upgrades, but also because they got a bunch of weapon mastery from everything else. So we do see they're trying to chase down this team, and I think they do end up getting flanked. So I'll go ahead and disable the UI. So once again, you guys can watch. Let me check that time first, and then you guys can kind of see how you would play the fights. Obviously, KR is on much lower ping, so maybe your inputs won't be as perfect, but I think the general fight decision making is really important because you can still really mimic that into your own gameplay. And yeah, a pretty clean team fight. They're even going to chase this team into the battle zone. And what's really important to note is that this is actually a team that took the factory battle zone for free. So it's not like the enemy team was weak. They just, I guess, got outplayed for the most part. So, and they all fully wiped, which is huge because that means it's one less team to deal with. I think it was about 11 minutes, so that's a little earlier than that. I'll speed through it. Yeah, so once again, this isn't like a unknown fight happening. This is a fight that OneCircle's team is prepared for because, again, they held zone control and had full vision, and even put a camera down just to make sure that they're not chasing into a random third party. And from the very start, we do see the Ava positioning kind of passively. She hit a R for a little bit, but for the most part, it's Magnus who's going to really start this fight. So once again, hey Chapel. Once again, we're going to see that Meowthen and Rio are going to be kind of this taunting off of each other. This concept's really important because you'll probably run into a lot of dual carry setups in your games, like dual range carry setups. And so if you're one of those ranged characters, you want to make sure that, again, you're not positioning too far from your other ranged character, because if you split up, suddenly it's a lot easier to run one of you down because you don't have the support of the other player. Again, you don't want to stand too close because the cat, they could obviously suture you really easily, or maybe the IRM in the corner might jump you really easily. But it's just important to understand that you guys support each other so well, whether it's sheer damage or random utility that either of your characters have. So Magnus obviously is trying to go for the heart of this team, which, again, they're both aware, so they split up but not too far. And we see OneCircle is going into the bush because this bush blocks vision from the other two. So Rio now has taunted the Irem and the Magnus, so OneCircle is really free to do whatever he wants. Obviously, the Ava is probably going to have a choice between the Rio or OneCircle, but again, since his teammate or since her teammates are focusing the Rio, that means OneCircle is very unlikely to be bursted by the Ava player. So we're gonna see Ava kind of blast off. Kind of a misclick because I think she didn't expect the Ava to the Rio to flash, so now Ava's kind of blasting nothing, but now this means OneCircle has free reign to blast the Irem or the Magnus, and he even actually jumps over to help the Rio because again, understand that if you're there to body block for the Rio, that means Rio, even though she has 10% HP, is still doing 100% damage because if she turns, she doesn't lose damage for having less HP. That means that the Irem is super easy to kill, and we see that kind of pay off when the Rio turns back around and autos the Irem for the kill. And then because of that, even though we know that his teammates are really far behind him, we can see that the let me check actually. We can see that the Mai still has ultimate, which OneCircle can see, which means that this engage is actually really safe despite not having ultimate, because if anything goes wrong, Mai is behind him, which means that Mai can ult him backwards and save him. So obviously Magnus has already used most of his cooldowns, which means that OneCircle is pretty open to chasing down Ava and knows how much damage his character does essentially, right? And then this Magnus is also a free kill. So again, super good fight awareness, just abusing the fact that the Rio was the target. And if your teammate is being hit, you need to make sure that you capitalize on that by hitting the enemy team that's hitting your teammate, right? Like, this idea of priority focus exists on both sides. So if you're not the priority, you should be doing damage, because if you're not doing damage, that's as if you're stunned. And if both your damage dealers aren't doing damage, of course you're losing the fight, right? A much more passive Carla player could back off and just play super safe. But then playing super safe means that you would have never got that Irem kill because Irem overdove. And if you don't recognize that the Irem overdove, then obviously it's not going to work out. So I don't think this is a real fight. I think this enemy team ends up running away, so I don't think there's that much to go over. They just take red, and OneCircle tries to do a cheeky little pull in on the Nikki, but obviously it doesn't work out. But once again, we see this concept of zone control. We see this purple box dropping into the zone that they've already had control of earlier. Kind of a replay bug here. We love these bugs, and they get a nice little objective, which is going to be the Mithril, which again is going to be a very nice upgrade to Racing Helm, which increases a lot of stats on that item. And they're just not going to move from this area. It is day 3 now, which means that dying is really bad. Once again, replay bug. This is day 3, not night 2. So this means that the bears are going to respawn fairly soon, probably within like the next 30 seconds. But OneCircle's team wants to make sure that they farm everything in Chapel, make sure they have vision in Chapel. Sorry about the silence in the background, and they want to make sure that, you know, they're not going to be jumped by a random team from the back while they're running around. So just really maximizing their farming efficiency. Obviously, at this point, somebody may have taken the warehouse bears, somebody may have taken the dock bears, and maybe they lose their positioning, but it's more important to stay together as a team relatively and make sure that you don't accidentally throw by letting your team run away way further than you are. And they do also see that warehouse kiosk has been taken, so once they get all these upgrades, they now have a new target to go for. And also, Mai doing a nice favor for our Carla player, giving OneCircle the new Mai dress, which is pretty good. I don't think Carla necessarily cares about the CDR. Maybe she does, but it is very good stats. Obviously, you're not going to really be sad about any of these stats on Courtier, and also makes your SP regen and management much easier. And we do see this next fight happening in this area. This is a team, again, that just ordered from Warehouse, so they're also not weak at all, but we still see just how aggressively OneCircle plays. I don't think there's really much to replay off of there, because they catch out 2 melees, they have everyone, and their other third isn't there, so obviously you're going to capitalize on that. And now we're just fishing for the Vanya, but in the end nothing really happens because the enemy team understands that the fight's a little scary. You're probably not going to try and force it because it is a Mai Rio, and if you try and fight a Mai Rio Carla at his advantage, you're probably just going to get melted and taken down almost instantly. And yeah, pretty nice bow skill. Does end up catching out the Camila for the most part, but he does have flash and all the skills. Instead, Vanya ends up paying the price. Does get slept though. Pretty nice sleep from the Vanya player, so their team will end up living another day. And oh, look at that. Which, see, the bears just respawned. So I was actually wrong because, again, the day bug is really hard to keep track. But the bears are there for them, which means that since they control the zone from earlier and they managed to, you know, kind of determine on their terms when these bears respawn, they can now farm even more because now they have dock bears and warehouse bears once again, assuming that they actually get to it since the Mai has found a pick on this new team. So since this is the actual fight, I was let it play out all the way, and then we can talk about it afterwards. Just because this is a pretty scary team. Debbie, Marlene, Rio, Nikki. I think their team is a little weak. Is a bit on the weaker end, but not necessarily that much weaker because they are still up on, or about the same on levels. You can check their items right when the fight ends to see just how. Yeah, it's not even. It's a fair fight too because Nikki is fully built, so we can see probably get a lot of value because this is a fight where they are technically behind. So, yeah, they are split up. They do see on the minimap what's happening, so OneCircle tries to go straight there, and Mai does end up engaging right when she sees them. OneCircle's there, so obviously beautiful taunt on all three of them. Starts the fight off very strong, and OneCircle once again is going to probably take the initiation just because him getting focused isn't a bad thing as long as his Rio is attacking. So even though him attacking first before Rio gets there is a little risky, that's a risk he's willing to take because again, if someone's like, if you're not doing damage and the other person isn't doing damage, then that's a problem. But if you're doing damage and you're getting hit, then hopefully the other AD carry will take the hint and do damage with you. So instead, we do get this kind of dual focus scenario where Rio gets ulted by Nikki, and then OneCircle is dealing with Debbie and Marlene. So they're both kind of getting like smacked around. Unfortunately for OneCircle, he does get tagged by the Debbie and Marlene ult after taking a full W, which is a lot of damage, and he has to jump away. But once again, we see this Rio like playing very aggressively. The Nikki ended up trying to focus OneCircle as well because Nikki saw that OneCircle got hit for a lot, but Nikki didn't have ultimate anymore, which means that she probably should have kept hitting the Rio. And the enemy Rio did what I mentioned earlier and probably backed away after the initiation of that fight because they thought they were going to get jumped, but instead they're essentially down a player the entire time and missing that Rio's damage output because I guess probably was hitting the Mai, but Mai is peeled back for her carries. And so because of that, then Nikki ends up diving in super deep, and this is what I mean, like pairing with your teammate ADC does so much because this Mai, or this Nikki rather, was pretty high HP and now has almost no HP and just gets exploded instantly. And then obviously the Mai cleans up, lands a nice little taunt, ends up getting taken down. The Rio does get away, but wasn't a nice gesture, and the Debbie and Marlene does get taken out. So a pretty big kill. You can see the credit score for the Rio is quite low, and again, this is night 3, so they have to spend credits to respawn. So as Rio, the most vulnerable character of her team, now has to run around and farm for 90 credits and just hope they don't get caught, because if they do, game's over. And I think nothing really happens. We can save some time by going to ×3, because it really is just a farming montage again. Once again, just like really making sure they can control the zone. Gonna run to dock, kill the bears there because the zone's about to close. You don't want to miss out on this potential RNG. And then you're gonna leave and go to chapel. And so now you're gonna be controlling chapel and warehouse. And another really important concept is with the idea of zone control is that the less you move across the map, the safer it is, because that means you're not wandering into territory that you have no information about. Like you see that they don't even want to go into cemetery necessarily because they haven't been in cemetery before. So that area is really unknown. You can see how careful they're playing because they know that another team's here, and thankfully for them, Mai's the one that gets caught and a pretty good fight happens. So once again, we'll go back for the replay and kind of analyze what he does, because I think it is OneCircle doing most of the heavy lifting after Mai gets caught, which turns the fight around, obviously takes down the Jackie almost instantly. So yeah, once the fight's over, we can go back. It's probably like 17-5. So yeah, once again, we see the pings, we know they're there, so OneCircle and the Rio are going to let the Mai lead. Mai obviously, they don't have good vision, and they even stay on top of the bat, which means that they have even more forewarning. And we see the enemy Carla actually getting a pretty sick stun on the allied Mai, and they're gonna burst her pretty hard. But OneCircle here sees all the damage coming out, keeps kiting, and then goes back in with her own crossbow skill and almost takes down Jackie immediately and jumps in afterwards and attempts to keep getting kills. Unfortunately, the enemy Carla does have flash still, and the Tazi does get her ease up. But you can see how OneCircle attempts to force the issue by jumping into them and trying to bait the teammates into, or the Jackie's teammates, and fighting her. And this time, another fight happening here that I almost forgot about, but I think they disengage, doesn't matter. But since Mai doesn't have her ultimate, it's a lot more dangerous. And that's kind of why I guess it's a high risk play to force the engage, because Kazuya and Carla could have walked back, but they didn't. And we see OneCircle again just playing very aggressively, just trying to force things that could happen because he knows he's really obviously confident. And we do see a fight here happening. The Emma kind of jumps in, dies instantly, which not really much to talk about. And then again, we see the fight where the point I'm talking about, where OneCircle tries to engage to force the fight because he's aware that they'll burn cooldowns to kill him, and Mai has ultimate to quote-unquote save him, which makes him a lot tankier because my ult gives you the auto dodges. Might be a fight worth going back to review just really quickly because it was kind of messy, so we can look even further and risk the replay breaking all my work being deleted. So yeah, straight from the beginning you can see that OneCircle immediately backs off with the Luke Q to make sure that he outranges it. Walks back in to make sure that Mai has some peel, which scares Luke off. And the reason why he sits in this bush, while it is kind of ill-advised, he just saw Luke throw a Q. And again, Mai has ultimate in 4 seconds, so OneCircle is pretty confident that if something stupid does happen, Mai will save him pretty easily. And this gives him a lot of poke on the Luke just to start the fight off well if it does end up happening. And because Luke is really the only ranged initiation, he is fine with doing even more damage because like Alex isn't in Tonfa or a melee weapon, so he can't really jump on him without warning. In which case OneCircle has more than enough reaction time to jump out with Q or even have Mai pull. And then Emma polymorph is very telegraphed, so pretty obvious when that's happening. So I don't know why this Emma ended up taking this engagement. I think it's because Luke's about to go in. Oh, I see. The Emma is trying to do the polymorph ult combination to get both Rio and OneCircle polyed. But OneCircle does see this, and I think it just barely misses. Like, this polymorph is so close to hitting, but unfortunately not quite. And so because of that, yeah, OneCircle just stuns, and they both kill the Emma. And then we're going to see right here the jump in just to force the other two to respect to be killed. And because of that, they do end up taking out the Luke as well, which is very good because, again, this is past day 3. I keep reiterating that, but this means that this team will have to spend a lot more credits to res. And also the Alex eats a lot of timer just because they had to go into red, and there's no real good spot to get out for a while. They do see pings though, and this is very smart. This is like a very heads-up play. This is something that you wouldn't really think of as a lower-level player, is tanking red to guarantee your rest in case there's more than another party here, because they had just killed the Alex and they saw multiple pings, which means it's a whole new team, but they don't know if there's another team that had wandered in from Forest. So they have to make sure that they stay alive, and so they know one team's killing Wick, but there's 4 other teams that they don't know about, or 3 other teams they don't know about, I think. And because of that, taking some time when you're super far ahead is always a good idea, just because you'd rather stay alive as a team, especially this late in the game, as opposed to greed like 10 seconds of a timer that you already have plenty of. And I think that's going to be about it for this area. I think maybe another fight happens. It is the Tazia's team again. I don't think do they fight here again? I think they do actually, because they need to get out. And so we do see that the timer is getting pretty low. We've looked at the map. We do see that the final zones are starting to lock down. And so it's going to be School, Forest, or Chapel final zone. And we're going to see something very interesting that this team decides to do. So usually, just a spoiler warning, the final zone is in School. Oh, there's a fight. Let's see if anything happens here. Yeah, we'll have to go back to that, my bad. Because this fight's also pretty interesting. Like, all these fights are really close because both teams aren't, like, every team in this lobby isn't super far ahead of the other, so even OneCircle has to play really well just to make sure that he closes up the game, because one false step means that if he dies, the rest of his team dies, and it's like a fast 6th place, which is really bad because that's not the multiplier zone. You want to be 3rd or higher. So yeah, they see pings from earlier, that's why they're playing back here instead of on top of the kiosk, and they're just waiting around for the enemy team to show their face. And so once again, I don't really know why Rio's staying so far up. She ends up ulting, and we see that OneCircle goes for a huge burst on the Carla, which is really good, but then the Tazia returns, and OneCircle has to get back, and then gets ulted in, which is honestly probably a really smart play by the Mai, because you see that Jackie just kind of had, like, it's like, oh, I meant to kill OneCircle, but now I have to kill the Rio, and Rio just out DPS trades him because it's late game Rio, and Jackie didn't get the best start on the Rio because he was going for OneCircle. So very good awareness by the Mai, and also very good reaction time by OneCircle to kind of combo the Carla to make sure it was a 2v3, and then jump back and then let the Mai save him from the Rio. So pretty funny stuff happening. And so this is what I was talking about that's interesting. So a lot of people in this scenario, they would think about hyperlooping to school, but that's super risky because hyperlooping might put you right into the middle of an enemy team. And even though you know you just like nearly full killed one team, there's still 3 other teams to pay attention to, which means that there's still multiple chances you might teleport into another team and just die instantly. So that's the reason why they even take the time to order, but they're just going to run straight through forest because it's a lot safer to run into a team as opposed to teleporting into them one by one. So obviously they saw the team go down, they saw the survivor count, and so they're very aware that there's just like they killed the solo, so they know it's 2 other full teams. So you just have to be kind of careful walking through because they might run into that full team at any moment when going through forest. So that's why my space tanking, that's why Rio's checking all the bushes. And they do see the enemy team, or the other team here. It is the Vanya, and they do smack the Vanya out a good amount. I think in the end, yeah, I'm not sure if Vanya goes down. Yeah, she definitely does because of the totem. Oh, never mind, the E comes up. But once again, you can see like the idea of the Rio being the taunt target gets the Camilo dead really quickly because OneCircle gets all the damage done. Nothing really special there to kind of go over, just because, as again, the concept of using your other damage dealer as a mode to make your own life easier. So these 2 auto attackers are very, very well built now, so they just do a lot of damage that melees can't really deal with at this point because they're too far behind. So at this point, when there's still more than 3 teams, you can see the player count. So just to pause here, there's a reason why OneCircle's team goes so ham on this fight, and it's because they know that any third party probably isn't going to be that scary. They ran the Vanya into red below them, which means that the Vanya might still be teleporting, and they know that there's only one other team that's full because they dropped the other team to 1. So this is the only full team that's left, which means that it's super safe because the Tazia, while it is kind of scary as a third party, isn't enough of a threat to really make this fight go badly if they have good engagement, which they do have. And I think at this point this game kind of just plays itself out. OneCircle's team is just so far ahead because they're playing insane late game scalers, and it's just a matter of closing the game out. So yeah, I hope that was really helpful. I know this video is a lot longer than it probably needs to be, but I wanted to do a really thorough in-depth analysis of the gameplay of the number 1 KR because I do think it's always good to look at another region and explain why this player is so dominant, because we do have a few dominant players in NA, but OneCircle is so good. It's crazy how good this guy is. And I just want to like kind of more thoroughly explain everything that happens because I think hopefully that's helpful. So as the Tazia gets kind of hide and seek, hopefully you guys can let me know if you guys like this content, just because it is a lot longer and even more rambly, and it is one take because, you know, it's a replay. So yeah, just let me know if you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good day or night wherever you are. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.